Now, traditionally, beef and broccoli is made with a skirt or a flank steak or something like that, but we are going budget friendly and we're making it with ground beef. Such a quick weeknight dinner. You guys are gonna love this. I'm telling you, it's like 20 to 30 minutes and you can have this thing on the table ready to go, and it's fantastic flavors. Now, I'm starting off this recipe by going ahead and prepping everything that I need because everything's gonna happen over on the stovetop. I'm prepping out all of the ingredients. I'm gonna cut up my broccoli. We need about 3 cups of broccoli. You can use frozen broccoli. I don't really suggest it because I don't think that it holds its crunch, which to me is part of what I love about this recipe, is the broccoli kind of holding its texture a little bit. I'm just chopping up about 3 cups of broccoli so that that's gonna be ready to go. The rice is in the rice maker, it's good to go, but this is gonna take about 20 minutes or so, and it's so easy and so good. Let's get going. Okay, we are turning, is this on? I cannot see. A little behind the scenes footage there. I have a camera that I have right over the stove so you guys can see that angle, but I actually cannot see what it's filming, so I have to stand on a chair. It's because I'm too short. Okay, we are turning on our heat to about a medium high, and I have about a tablespoon of, this is avocado oil. Just use what kind of oil you prefer. We'll put that in there, get that heated, and we're gonna start heating up the broccoli. Now, while that's going, I'm going to stir together the ingredients for my sauce that we're making. So this is 1 cup of beef bone broth. I'm gonna add in some honey. So about 1 to 2 tablespoons. I don't measure this, we just pretend that we know exact measurements. This is a 1/4 cup of soy sauce. You guys know a lot of times I substitute out coconut aminos, but we found a soy sauce that is called a no soy sauce. So I'm adding in 1/4 cup of that. I know that's kind of random. We just don't do soy, so this is less sodium, soy-free. Gosh, I cannot say that. Less sodium, soy-free sauce. Okay, so again, 1/4 cup of that. Let's add it in. I have about 2.5 tablespoons of brown sugar. You can use up to 3 tablespoons, but you guys know whenever we make things, I don't prefer really, really sweet. Some minced garlic. This is about 2 cloves. We'll add that in. And we're gonna add in some of this ginger paste. You can just add in actual grated ginger if you want to. You could use the dried ginger, it's totally up to you. We love the flavor of ginger, so we are not gonna skip on this. The recipe calls for a 1/2 teaspoon. No, I usually add like a tablespoon because we genuinely love the flavor of ginger. We're mixing all that together. Actually, we'll continue to mix, but let's get that broccoli in. The pan is nice and hot now. Actually, it's probably overly hot because I forgot about it for a second. It's definitely hot. Whoop, whoop, we lost some. I'm really only gonna cook it for about 4 to 5 minutes. I don't want it to get soft. We're just cooking it a little bit. So I'm gonna add in, let's add just a tad of salt and pepper. Obviously, our sauce is gonna have a lot of flavor, so I don't wanna add too much, but just a little. All right, we're near done here. We're gonna take this and put it into a bowl, and then I'm gonna cook up the ground beef. I am gonna add just a touch of oil back in. This beef is a pretty lean ground beef. Now, if you have a higher fat content in your beef, then you can just skip that because you probably won't need it. Now, if you are using onions and peppers, which is a great option for this recipe, this is where you would want to add them in right after your beef gets a little bit browned and start cooking those too. I'm gonna be adding in onion powder. And honestly, I would add red bell pepper because I love red bell pepper in this recipe. I thought we had it and we're out of it, so. Obviously, we can't add something we don't have. My ground beef is cooked, so we've seasoned it, we've cooked it, we've crumbled it. We are gonna add in that sauce mixture. Make sure it's nice and stirred. And I also have 2 tablespoons of, what's this called? Cornstarch. We actually have tapioca powder. 2 tablespoons of water. We're gonna mix that together. so that we can thicken this sauce up. And we do need to bring this up to a simmer, up to a little bit of a boil here, so that this will help it thicken up. So we're really still on a medium-high heat. See how this starts to work, and then I might crank it up just a smidge. It smells amazing. I knew it would. Okay, it's thickened up really nicely, so we're gonna toss back in the broccoli and just let that reheat. Let's just take a moment and all think about how beautiful this would look with some of that red bell pepper in there, okay? Poor planning on my part. Y'all, this is ready. All we have to do is serve it over rice now. I mean, couldn't be any easier. Okay, let's get a little bite with the rice. Great flavor, so fast, so fast. I mean, maybe 30 minutes actually might be a stretch. I'm talking like a 20-minute meal here. Very, very good, budget friendly for sure, delicious. You guys, if you are looking for all those things, try this one. Now, from a personal perspective, you guys know I cut down. Most recipes that I've seen call for 2 to 3 tablespoons of what's it called? Brown sugar. I personally think that even the lesser side of that, maybe like 1.5 to 2 tablespoons, but you know, I prefer savory over sweet. So I would choose less on the sweetness any day. But other than that, so good. But also get you some red bell pepper, because how pretty would this look with some red bell pepper? Tonight's dinner is a 1-pot meal. However, there are some things that I need to prep first so that we can actually make this 1-pot meal. And the first thing that I need to do is shred up some cheese. Shredding up this Parmesan, because that's what we're gonna need for this recipe. We only need 3 tablespoons, so we can really not worry about shredding up more than this right here. This is how great this thing is. Now, it can just go in the dishwasher. Now we need to make up a Cajun seasoning that's gonna go on our chicken. You can use as much or as little of the spices as you want. I'm gonna start with some thyme, and I'm using about a teaspoon. I don't really measure this just because I've made up this specific recipe so many times. I'm so cool. Add some oregano, again, about a teaspoon. Also, you can buy Cajun seasoning if you don't wanna mix it up, that's totally fine. We are going to add some onion powder, and I think we usually do like in between a 1/2 teaspoon and a teaspoon, and then same with garlic powder, in between a 1/2 teaspoon and a teaspoon. I love adding paprika. That is a must for me in a Cajun seasoning. And we like to add about a teaspoon of this, so we do not shy away from the paprika. Also, paprika adds beautiful color, so that's another reason for it. Cayenne pepper, I usually do about a 1/4 teaspoon, but this is the one that if you feel like a 1/4 teaspoon is gonna be too much for your family, just go less on that one and it's gonna be okay. And then as far as the salt goes, I usually do about a 1/2 teaspoon. Again, feel free to go less on that if that's something that you prefer. And now our Cajun seasoning is ready to go. That can just be mixed together. Okay, I've got these sun-dried tomatoes right here that I found in a bag. Okay, so this is not the proper knife to do this with, but the other ones are in the dishwasher. We need about 3 tablespoons, 2 to 3 tablespoons, just depending on how much you love. Let's just add these to a bowl so that this was a larger bowl than I needed, but that's okay. We're gonna add these to a bowl so they'll be ready to go. Now, you can use whatever kind of chicken you prefer, but I am gonna be using chicken thighs. As I'm cutting these into small pieces, I'm going to just add them directly to the spice mixture that we made. Bite-sized pieces, or you could even cut it into strips if that's your preference. So this is technically a 1-pot meal. Obviously, there's some prep involved with this one. Once we're done with this prep work, we'll just take everything over to the stovetop. Let's just mix that together in those awesome spices. And we are going to then head over to the stovetop where everything else is gonna happen, because this was the last bit of the prep work for this recipe. So I just like to make sure, you wanna mix it well, because I wanna make sure each bite gets this amazing Cajun flavor. Also, when I say Cajun, don't be afraid of that word, because it doesn't necessarily have to mean spicy. I think that's subjective to each household. So if you are not a huge fan of spice, you can just take that down a notch by cutting down the amount of cayenne. Just cut down a little bit of cayenne pepper. All right, friends, let's get our heat on I'm gonna start with like medium. We're really just gonna melt the butter at this point. We've got a tablespoon of butter in here and about a half tablespoon of avocado oil, but feel free to use whatever kind of oil you prefer. Okay, the butter is melted, so I'm gonna crank up the heat a bit so that we can get a nice sear on the chicken. Now I'm just gonna let this sear for a couple of minutes, and then we're gonna add in a couple other ingredients. Trying to get somewhat of a single layer here, just so that we can get all of it with a nice sear. You can smell all the herbs here, this fragrance. Oh my goodness, I love a meal that includes so much fragrance like this when it's cooking. Oh yeah, look at that color right there. That is beautiful. Let's turn our heat down to low so that we can add in everything else. If you're choosing to use onion, this is where you would add that, but we're gonna add in about 2 cloves of minced garlic. We wanna add in those 2 tablespoons, 3 tablespoons-ish of sun-dried tomatoes. We also want to add in 1 tablespoon of tomato paste. Okay, let's mix all that together. Remember, I said I turned my heat down to a low. We don't wanna burn the garlic or anything. We just want everything to come together and be really fragrant. So this is just gonna cook for about 3 minutes or so on this low heat. My goodness, you guys, the smell is incredible. This is going to be so good. Also, once you get everything kind of ready to go, this comes together pretty quickly. I mean, it's a one-pot meal. You know, one-pot meals are actually they're pretty easy in and of themselves, but it's also about a 30-minute meal, which is fantastic. This is one of those where you're gonna get a great meal on the table in a short amount of time. Let's take 1 cup of Orzo, and we're going to add this in. And what I like to do is just toast up the Orzo a little bit. So you're adding it in and just mixing it around, letting it toast up a bit before you add in the cooking liquid. It's probably not totally necessary. This is just a step that I usually take. I have 1 cup of chicken broth. This is actually chicken bone broth. Let's add that in. And we're gonna bring this up to a simmer. So I am gonna go to about medium heat. Mix everything together, making sure that that Orzo is gonna get nicely cooked. Even though we're putting a lid on this, you do want to stir it occasionally. So 20 minutes, but I'm gonna stir it at least every 4 to 5 minutes. All right, one thing to note about Orzo is it has a tendency to soak up liquid pretty quickly. So you can see here, I mean, it's not dry, but it's starting to soak it up, and I still have 7 minutes left on the timer. So we're gonna add a little bit of water to this to make sure that it continues cooking. I'm gonna start with about a 1/4 cup. I'll keep this here just in case we need a little bit more, but that's really typical. That you shouldn't be alarmed if that happens. Okay, we have about 1 minute left. I'm giving its final stir. I've got some spinach here, and I actually am gonna cut this up a little bit before putting it in there, but I'm just gonna use my scissors to do it. So in this last minute, I'm gonna grab a stack, kind of stack them on top of each other like so, and we're just going to create kind of like ribbons. We're just mixing this together and letting that spinach wilt. At this point, my heat is just on low. It's basically just keeping everything warm. That spinach is wilting really nicely. We have 1/4 cup of heavy cream. I'm gonna pour that in and mix it all together. You could probably skip that step if you want to cut down on the fat content. I mean, it looked delicious even before that. So I honestly think it would be good even without that heavy cream. Now the heavy cream obviously is gonna cut the spice just a little bit. So it really just depends on what you're looking for there. And now we are going to add a couple of tablespoons of Parmesan, about 3, and then I'll probably just top each plate with a little bit. This is really good. The only suggestion that I personally would make is to add a little more cayenne, because I think I personally and my husband would like a little more heat with this recipe. But overall, the flavors are very good. Definitely taste that tomato paste, that tomato base of this recipe. The little bit of sun-dried tomatoes, you might even want to add a little more of those if you're a fan of sun-dried tomatoes. But the orzo's cooked to perfection, in my opinion. It's that's al dente. Very, very good option for dinner. We are going to make an air fryer recipe. This is called Bang Bang Shrimp, and I'm really excited about this one. In this first bowl, I should probably tell you, in this bowl right here, I've got some shrimp. It is deveined, it has no shell, it has no tail, it's ready to go. And we are gonna be going from bowl to bowl, like in a dipping process. The recipe suggests buttermilk. We do not have buttermilk, we have regular milk, but I'm gonna add a little bit of lemon juice to this half cup of milk and make more of like a buttermilk. And while I make up the other ones, I'm gonna go ahead and just let the shrimp sit in that buttermilk. So we'll just transfer them all over into that. Honestly, this part, if you wanted to, you could do earlier in the day and just have it sitting in the milk, like even in a bag or a bowl, covered in your fridge. You could do that ahead of time. All right, in this next bowl, we need cornstarch. We actually use arrowroot flour instead of cornstarch, so that's totally fine as well. But you do not use flour, it's cornstarch. We use tapioca flour, same thing. So you need about 3/4 of a cup, which is close to finishing this off. In the last bowl, we're gonna add some breadcrumbs. I'm gonna start with around a cup, and we'll see if that ends up being enough. I'm gonna leave this out because if we need it, we'll have it. I am gonna add a little bit of salt to the cornstarch. And you do not have to do this, but I wanna make sure that they get good flavor. Let's go ahead and take our air fryer basket. I'm gonna spray this so that it's ready to go. And then we will have a nice assembly line here. So this might be a little backwards the way that we're doing this, but I like to have it in the buttermilk to kind of get that flavor. So what I'm doing is cornstarch, buttermilk, then panko, okay? So you're getting a nice crust on it, and then it goes in your air fryer basket. Now, if you wanna do an assembly line and just go from one bowl to the other and not a back and forth, you don't have to put your shrimp into the buttermilk and leave it in there. It's just a preference thing. All right, my air fryer is preheated to 400. These are gonna go in for 5 minutes, then we'll flip them, and then another 5 minutes. Let's make up a quick sauce to go with this. I'm starting with some mayonnaise, and I'm gonna go less than the recipe calls for. It calls for a half cup, but let's just cut this around half. And then we're gonna also add some sriracha, about a 1/4 teaspoon, really not too much. Now, normally I would add a sweet chili sauce to this because it will be delicious with that. And normally that's something we have on hand, just not right now. So I'm gonna change up the recipe a little bit, and we're gonna add this Thai red curry paste, just a touch of that. And then I'm actually, because this is sweet, I'm gonna add a little bit of coconut aminos. So we'll see, this might not be the best sauce ever. And if that's the case, we won't have a sauce. All right, let's add the shrimp on top of the rice that I made. Then I'm gonna top it with the sauce, and I did try it. I like it. It's not exactly like a yum yum, it's a little different. I think it's really good. And then we're gonna take some parsley for color. This looks good, y'all. Okay, I'm gonna try one of these shrimp, and I'm just gonna use one of the ones that was over here on the air fry basket because these just look so pretty. The only thing I would say is to cook these 8 minutes, not 10. But otherwise, the flavor is good. Now, if you've had the Bang Bang shrimp from, what is it, Bonefish? From Bonefish, This sauce is different, obviously, because we didn't have the sweet chili sauce, but I think it actually would be really similar with that sauce. Our verse today comes from Romans 10:10. For it is with your heart that you believe and are justified, and it is with your mouth that you profess your faith and you are saved. I hope that you guys enjoyed these 30-minute meals. If you need more inspiration, I've got more of them here. Maybe you're in the season where you just need to get a good home-cooked meal on the table, but it needs to be fast. So I'm gonna suggest you check out this video that I have listed above. Hope you have a great week.